As you've learned in previous chapters, you can bring your website to life with interactive and animated pages using cascading style sheets, maybe some JavaScript widgets, Dreamweaver's effects or behaviors, and images. But as you've probably seen by now, a lot of web pages these days go even further. You know, there's video, there's sound, there's other things that are going to be used to grab your attention. So adding sound, video, and animations to your pages are the next step. We're going to start off by discussing how HTML5 tags can add audio and video to your pages easily if you've already got audio and video files ready to go. But you'll also learn about different file formats that are going to come into play in regards to what browsers are capable of displaying the videos that you happen to have. Browser compatibility is still, to a degree, problematic when it comes to video and audio files. Internet Explorer, Safari, Chrome, and Firefox expect you to deliver video and audio in specific file formats. So this discussion is going to tell you what the issues are and how you can convert media into formats to reach the widest possible audience with whatever content you happen to have on your pages. For years, Adobe's Flash program dominated the web universe in a couple areas in regards to animated graphics like web advertisements and games, as well as video delivery. So think YouTube as an example there. But Flash isn't the only, game in town these days. But it's still used, so Flash is also going to be included in this particular lecture, even though it is starting to phase out a little bit. We're going to start with discussing sound audio files. In the past, webmasters had to turn to browser plugins like Adobe Flash to add sound clips. Now, thanks to HTML5 and its new audio tag, that's no longer the case. No plugins are necessary in order to play the audio, assuming you're using the proper file types. Modern browsers are designed to understand the audio tag, and they can play audio files right out of the box. You don't need anything special in order to make that function, like a Flash plugin, for instance. But the bad news is that each of the big 5 browsers, those are Internet Explorer, Chrome, Firefox, Safari, and Opera, play some but not all audio formats. The bottom line is that you can't choose a single audio format and make sure that all of your audience will be able to hear the same song. So depending upon what browser your viewers are using, or what browsers maybe you think your viewers will be using, you will want to pick an audio file that will be compatible with who you think will be browsing your websites. One way to kind of make sure that you can reach the broadest audience will be to include the audio clip in at least 2 different formats. So that can be kind of a workaround. So in order to add audio to a website, you have to do 2 separate steps. First, you're going to produce those audio files. Then you will add code for the audio files as part of your web page. You'll almost always want to convert your recording, this is assuming you're making your own recording, to a smaller file type, even at the expense of some audio fidelity. It may not be as good as it could possibly be, but lowering the quality makes sure that it's a smaller size. Making sure it's a smaller size means that it won't take forever to load on a browser. So web browsers can play 3 audio formats. The first 2 are MP3s and OGG or OGG files. These are the most common for web pages. So MP3s, you've probably got some floating around on your iPod or on your cell phone or any other device. Internet Explorer, Chrome, and Safari all support MP3 files, which can be relatively small, and they provide pretty good sound quality. But keep in mind that if you only use this file, you're going to be losing out to Firefox and Opera users. in terms of who can browse and use those, review those file types on their browser. But if you have to provide audio for only a single file format, MP3 is the way to go. The OGG file format was developed as an open source, patent-free alternative to the MP3. It's pretty common on Linux computers, but less so with Windows and Macs. And then there's the WAV file, or the WAV. This is sometimes called audio for Windows. This is a file type that Microsoft and IBM developed when computers could barely beep, much less do what they do today. WAV files are humongous, so it is very unlikely that you will ever use a WAV file type to communicate audio through a website or otherwise, just because it will take forever to load. So once you have your audio clip, I've downloaded some audio clips for use in this demo, but once you've got it, you need to store it with your other website files and create links in your web page to it. So I'll go ahead and head on over to my files. Some music. I'm just going to click and drag it in. So there's my MP3. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to click in my HTML where I want that file to go. So I'm going to be basically making a link from my file to have that appear in my page. So I'm placing my cursor where I'd like that to be located. This is not just where the file is going to be located in terms of a link, but there's also going to be playback buttons that can ensure that the viewer can manipulate how the music plays. So this is going to be where the playback controls come into play, where that's going to appear visually. In the insert panel under HTML, I'm going to scroll down. It's going to start with HTML5 video, but this is all the different media types that you can add in. So I'm going to come up to HTML5 audio. It's got a little speaker icon next to it. I'll click that. It places in the audio control on my behalf. You notice the properties panel is visible. And then next to the source box, this is going to be where I'm sourcing my file. So I'll switch back to the files panel and I'll point at it, which file I want it to play. The alternate sources are where you put your other file types. So this happens to be an MP3 file. If I had an OGG file or a WAV file, you can put alternate sources, and essentially what your browser will do is if it can't play the first one, it will alternate to the others. So it will automatically fall back to those should it not play. Title is going to be, a short descriptive name. I'll put in the title of the song. Fallback text. If this file doesn't work, this is going to be what is displayed, like, maybe something like, sorry, your browser doesn't support this clip. Something along those lines. Preload. Set the preload to auto and then change it back to none. That seems kind of silly that there's two steps here, but there's a reason for that. That preload attribute determines whether your visitor's browser starts downloading the audio file while it downloads text, photos, and other parts of a web page. Audio files can be large, and it can actually slow down the loading of the whole website, so you don't necessarily want automatic preloading. None will tell the browser not to preload the audio. This is the option to use if your audio file is particularly large, like over a minute long. Mine is, close to 5 minutes long. So, or if a visitor is unlikely to play the audio, you don't necessarily need to preload it. Dreamweaver displays the word none in that preload menu, but it doesn't actually write preload none here in your HTML. If I hit undo, and I'll go ahead and click on that. So here's where we were before. Here's all my fallback information. You'll see that even though preload says none here, it doesn't actually show it up here until I switch it. Now it shows auto, and then I switch it back. So that just makes sure that it is set to do what you want it to do. Auto, just like with images, if you're going to have it auto load, it'll tell browsers to automatically download the file once that page loads. Oops. The metadata. This option tells browsers to download information about the audio, like its track and duration. So this can be a good option for audio that's several minutes long, like the one that I happen to have. Make sure that you have the controls text box turned on. If that is turned off, it'll play automatically and nobody gets the chance to turn it off or mute it or do any of that stuff. So from a visitor standpoint, there's nothing more frustrating than visiting a web page and realizing you can't control the music, especially if maybe you've got headphones on and you're browsing with like a mobile device and then you realize you can't pause it or turn it off. So just be kind to your visitors. Leave the playback information there. There are other options as well, though. Autoplay will start playing as soon as it loads. So it's good to leave that turned off just in case someone's visiting the website and maybe isn't in a situation where they can deal with sound, like maybe at work on a break or something. The loop check makes your clip play over and over. Once it finishes, it starts back up again. So again, kind of like removing the controls, there are a few things more annoying than short clips of audio that loop. So especially so if you can't give them the controls to stop it. So, probably leave that turned off for now. Muted turns off the audio. It mutes. That's all it does. And if I click play, gives a preview of the audio clip. All right, come close. And just like with any other audio, you have the ability to scrub to a later part in the song. You can mute or unmute or control how much volume you're actually getting. So works just the way that you'd expect it to. It's not difficult. Really, the tricky thing is just making sure that your file isn't too large for your host to host for you. Something that you will want to be conscientious of when it comes down to manipulating audio and video files for assignments that are upcoming is if you are using a free host, and I know several of you are, many free hosts don't allow for you to use, or host rather, don't allow for you to host your own video and audio just because of the bandwidth. So when it comes down to using hosts that maybe you aren't financing, you will definitely want to consider using YouTube or another like free player where the file itself is being hosted on another website, but where you have access to maybe embed a link or a video of some kind in order to still have the interactivity. So just, keep that in mind. So that's audio in a nutshell. It's pretty simple. HTML5 video is actually very similar. Video on the web isn't really the novelty that it used to be. YouTube is a huge thing now, so it's very accessible. But it is easier to bring in and code it to a website versus the way that it used to be. It used to be a lot more complicated. Modern desktop, tablet, and phone browsers play video files without needing plugins like Flash, just like the audio file we talked about. So the HTML5 video tag is going to be functional very much in the same vein as an audio file. Just like with audio also, however, the 5 major browsers play video files, but they also support different file formats, of course. So to reach the widest audience, you will want to supply clips in more than one format. MP4, like the MP3, is going to be the most versatile. The OGG file extension works with audio as well as with video. And then there's a third option, WebM, which I don't know that I've ever actually used in a professional capacity, but same basic concept. So in order to bring in a video file, grab an MP4, click on your video link that I've just inserted a moment ago, tell it what I want the source to be. That is a big file, so let's see if we can control that a little bit. All right, I just typed in the width of 500 pixels and the height constrained to that size, fortunately, so I don't have too large of an image. It is good to compress these as much as you can, but I'm at the mercy of what my cell phone was able to record in this instance. As with the audio files, you can provide an alternate source, a title, and a fallback text should something not play. As with audio, preload to auto and then switch it back to none to make sure that it's set up properly. Again, turning the controls off is just going to let the video play and not give anyone any control over what happens. Autoplay, loop, and muted, these all function the same way. Literally, there's very little that's different here. The poster property allows you to display a placeholder image when your video isn't playing. So if there is a particular screenshot or screen grab of the video that you want to place here before you click play, that's what this winds up being. So this can be any static image, so like a JPEG, a GIF, or a PNG. Any of those are acceptable. If you don't specify a poster image, most browsers are going to just display the first frame of the clip or the video that you have. We'll give it a play. Same concept. I can hit pause, fast forward, adjust the volume. And nice thing is you have a full screen option too, which is cool. All that's built in. Embedding YouTube videos. Let's jump on over to YouTube. So I've gone over to YouTube and just grabbed a animation. I'm gonna view the page for that. So whenever you're on YouTube, before you host, don't just grab this link up here, because while that does lead to the video, it doesn't include the player that will embed all the time. A couple reasons YouTube might be a direction that you'd like to go in regards to video of any type is because again, as I mentioned before, video itself takes a lot of bandwidth and server processing power. So putting video on your own server can easily slow down your site and cost you money once you hit your web host's monthly bandwidth allotment. So taking into consideration that some of you might not be paying for hosting your own videos may not even be an option because of the amount of bandwidth that will be used, even just during the critique phase of class. So, so YouTube's great because it hosts the video for you without it having to eat into your bandwidth at all. Also, this can be the ultimate fallback option for browsers that don't support the video tag that we've been using, the HTML video tag. So you might want to include, the fallback text as can't see our video, try it in YouTube and maybe provide a link there. But we'll say we want to take Simon the Cat's animation and put on our website. So I'll click share. Share is just going to give me the link. I want to embed it. And what this does is it provides us with an iframe tag at a particular dimension that is going to display that particular video. If I click show more, I get additional options. I can pick the video size. Maybe I want really high res, somewhere a little lower. It lets me completely customize even the size that I'm going to be getting. I'll stick with what the default is. And you can specify how that ends up reviewing later on as well. Show suggested videos when it finishes, sure, or if it's not necessary, click no. Show player controls, I recommend that. We'll leave that one checked. Show video title and player actions, so you can see what the title of the video is here. But once you make these changes, it alters the embed link that we're adding. So allow full screen. So I'm just going to copy, Command or Control C, come on over here, come into my HTML, and I'm just going to paste that iframe. That's it. That is literally all that you have to do. Using or embedding YouTube videos is actually extremely easy. If YouTube gives you some problems, or if maybe you're not finding what you like there are other free video hosting websites like Vimeo is one of them. Same general concept. If you want to embed that image, click on the website that takes you directly to that video. So I just clicked on the Vimeo icon in the bottom. Got the option to share right here. Here's the embed, and then you just click the show options icon here and it will give you additional opportunities. One thing that I actually like quite a bit about Vimeo is if you want to kind of tailor the video player to match the rest of your website, you can actually, depending on the video and how their stuff is set up, you can actually set it up to have a specific color palette. So like right now this has got like a blue, orange, white color palette going on, but you do have the ability with some of the videos to customize that. The byline is going to be who made the video. Title is the title. I'm not sure what portrait represents. And then you can set it to autoplay, loop, show text underneath, or show the description beneath. Either way, once you're done, same concept as YouTube. You copy the embed text after it's been customized. You come on over to there and it will embed and be playable. So same general concept. Either way, it's pretty simple. You'll notice this one threw some extra text in. So if you don't want that visible, you can always jump on in and remove what you don't want to include. There we go. Make a little space here. Lastly, we're gonna talk about Flash animations. So a few years ago, and by a few I mean maybe at least 8, if you wanted to add smooth animation, video, slideshows, or any other high quality interactive effects on a web page, Flash was really the only way to go about that. Now, thanks to the Flash plugin, which is available for almost all browsers at this point, web developers use the Flash authoring program to make videos that can be played inside of a browser and add programming logic so those videos respond to visitor feedback. So think mouse movement, clicks, keyboard input, etc. Now, the JavaScript programming language now provide an alternate to many simple forms of animation and interactivity. You guys have probably seen that a little bit already with some of the drop-down menus and such that we've explored in previous lectures. But Flash provides other benefits as well. It plays third-party audio and video files, and it has advanced programming features that let you add a level of sound, video, and interactivity that make plain HTML pages look dull by comparison. In addition, Flash animations and videos look and work exactly the same way in every browser, no matter whether you're using a Mac, PC, or even Linux. So that type of cross-platform compatibility is actually pretty rare. So that said, though, that 90% figure of all the different browsers and computer types that can play Flash, that is all coming down to computers only. 2 of the most popular devices for surfing the web, the iPhone and the iPad, don't support Flash whatsoever. So if you think you're going to have visitors using those particular types of devices to search for anything on your website and you want to make sure that they have access, maybe Flash isn't the way to go about doing that. So just like inserting audio and video, inserting a Flash item, I've got some Flash files here. Inserting a Flash item is very much the same. A Flash extension is called an SWF file. So I've placed that in. I'll come back down to insert. You'll notice there's an option specifically for Flash SWF. So just like before, I'm going to click where I'd like that to be inserted, click the SWF. It says you need to have the file before inserting. I'll click, yeah, I'll go ahead and save this. I've saved. It's going to ask me to prompt it. I'll tell it, yes, I'd like to do that. It's going to ask me for my title. I'll just call it Flash Animation. You can also set it up to have an access key and a tab index. That's not necessary for the way I'm going to be using it, so I'll click OK. Now, if I'm going to be seeing it in live mode, you're going to notice it's going to not preview for me. It's actually going to prompt me to, or show a prompt as though I don't have Adobe Flash Player present on my page. Cool part about that is that this is what it's going to show should someone not have Flash on their website, or on their browser rather. So I've included that SWF file, and it's going to actually tell you, you need this, and it's going to send a link to get that Flash player should someone not already have it, which is very convenient. So live mode doesn't display the video. So in order for me to see that video, I would need to come do a preview of the page in a browser in order to visualize how that's going to look. Here's the video. This is a student animation, so one thing you'll notice, and I'll go ahead and cancel out of that, one thing you'll notice is that that particular video does not have controls in order to pause, play, stop, or otherwise. So not an ideal situation, but there's only so much that we can do. Now, I've clicked on that SWF object, and in the properties panel, I've got a few different opportunities. Here's where the file's been linked. You can specify the quality, so if it's a little bit too large, we can adjust that. I can change the width and height here, which would be very helpful. You may find at one point that you want to rename your animation. Just like JavaScript can control images and buttons, it can also control Flash animations. So Dreamweaver assigns generic IDs to each animation of Flash that you embed. So this is Flash ID, the next one would be Flash ID 2, Flash ID 3. You can set it up to loop or autoplay. Since I don't have a play button for that, I'll leave autoplay on, but I'll turn loop off. I'll go ahead and change my animation size as well. We'll do maybe 600. Now, you'll notice that there isn't an option to link these together. So if I change the width, but I don't change the height, when I go to preview that, fortunately, despite the fact that it didn't resize the height, it did scale proportionate. The V and H space, these kind of represent margins. Leave these blank. This is a lot easier to control using CSS if you want to control how that video plays, as opposed to using the V and H space, which is a little bit outdated. I recommend setting the quality to auto high if you use this. This essentially makes the animation switch to low quality mode if the visitor's computer requires it. Maybe they don't have a great internet connection or something along those lines. This at least will auto default rather than lag through your host if there's a problem. You can control the alignment here, so if you want it to be, centered or aligned against a certain edge, you can. Again, I think that CSS is going to be a lot easier to control this than this one here. Background color. Just for fun, I'll throw a background color in here. One thing with Flash animations that you want to be aware of is that a lot of Flash animations are vector and they support transparency. So depending on what the animation is, sometimes you can actually tint the backdrop of the animation. So here's what that looks like. You can also tell, there we go. You could also tell based on that animation that when I shrank the width, but I didn't adjust the height is where that blue is, even though that animation is only in a narrow area. So if you want to make sure that the box surrounding the animation is proportionate, you might want to do a little bit of math to when you scale down your content. Now, even though the Flash plugin is nearly universal, you can't be sure that every visitor's browser has it. So this is why Dreamweaver has the auto download feature built into any Flash video that gets imported. Now there are files called Flash videos as well. This is going to be similar to like the YouTube embed, that kind of thing. I don't have a Flash video to actually bring in to show how it's going to work, but it's going to function kind of similarly to the HTML5 video, where you do get to control how, what displays, what doesn't display. It's also nice to know that the Flash player gives you different skins that are going to provide a different visual based on which option you select. So it'll still have the playback buttons and the buttons for audio and potentially some sliders, but this is going to give you additional options in regards to how does the skin, how do the buttons actually look. So this requires an FLV file, so this is a flash video file. It's a slightly different file from an SWF. So if you have one of those, you would just insert it here, pick your skin, which is for the video playback buttons, set the width and the height. This would automatically set up assuming that the video is brought in. Clicking constrain is good because that makes sure that it doesn't scale awkwardly like this flash video did. And you can set it up to autoplay or auto rewind, and then you would just hit OK once you have a URL input. So adding additional interactive content to a web page using video or audio isn't actually very difficult. Ultimately, any of these items you can control using CSS. Just pay attention to what the tags are, or consider, potentially wrapping something in a div or arranging it with a div. These can all be floated and add margins to them, put borders around them, whatever you'd like. Just really the CSS is going to really come down to how you can get those to line up with other content that you've already placed in.